Lords, ladies, and legends, thank you for being here. We are back, and we have a very interesting and unique video, which you won't find anywhere else on this channel today. Because one of my internet comrades gave me permission to use a quote by his great-grandpappy. He said, "The problem with the free marketplace of ideas is that there's too much impulse buying." And this comrade's great-grandpappy must be very wise, because something that Soren Kierkegaard, under his pen name Johannes de Silentio, wrote goes a little like this. "Not just in commerce, but in the world of ideas too, our age is putting on a veritable clearance sale. Everything can be had so dirt cheap that one begins to wonder whether in the end anyone will want to make a bid." Pretty interesting. So this is going to bring me to talk about an important point that needs to be made, and that is the cost of ideas. Oh, look at that, lightning. And there's a fucking storm, great. Now, the real cost of ideas is not just time, it's not just deliberation, it's not just effort. There's a lot more of this immaterial that goes into it. Okay? And let's say, to give a very strange and abstract and off-the-wall example, there are very cheap bananas in Mozambique or someplace. I don't know. And they're way cheaper than we have them here. Why am I not buying those cheap bananas? It's a pretty obvious why, right? It's because they're not available to me. They're too freaking far away. So, an interesting thing is, not just in the world of commerce, but also in the realm of ideas, that happens. It's in things like institutions or collectives of any type wanting to hoard up knowledge behind a paywall, or behind a wall of hoops that you have to jump through just to get to it. And then because the quality information that they have is not available, most people only have access to shit. Okay? That's the way it goes. We got to acknowledge that. So one way that we could actually mitigate that is getting rid of the paywall. Yeah. Or being a little bit less pretentious about credibility, and I have a video series that I started on that. Alright? So what's another cost, besides just going and needing to hunt for the information, of examining information? Well, like I said, energy, time. A lot of people want to judge just basically on appearances or source experts, right? So that they don't have to deliberate, or they'll just source whatever is put in front of them and choose among the options that are put in front of them because they're most available, right? But also, and this needs to be mentioned, even though a lot of people are not going to like it, let's say one person has a great deal of intellect and another person doesn't. And by the way, something I'm going to talk about is that there's really not that much variation in intelligence from person to person. Not nearly as much as people like to think. But anyway, just go to extremes. Some person is a freaking genius, and they are able to critically examine all the information, no matter what it is, that they're presented. Okay? That's like someone who has, in the real market, okay? That's like someone who has a butt ton of money, okay? It is not as much of a cost to them to examine ideas. Someone of high intellect. Just like it's not a high cost to someone who is rich to buy something very extravagant, very expensive. And while we might not be able to mitigate, in the realm of ideas, we might not be able to mitigate a deficiency of intellect, what we can do is teach critical thinking. What we can do is develop the skills to examine information, and that starts in education, that starts in childhood. And I can't speak for the current situation, but I'm only in my mid-20s, okay? It hasn't been that long since I've been in school, but when I was there was no critical thinking being taught, okay? I think the only thing I ever learned about logical fallacies was like 3 different logical fallacies when I was like a sophomore in high school, okay? That's public education for you. They don't want you to be able to critically examine ideas because by design, they want you to only accept the options that they present, all right? So if we're actually going to mitigate these things, we need to teach critical thinking so that there's not as much of a wealth gap in being able to examine ideas. We need to get rid of the freaking paywall that's holding people, or that's denying people access to the information in the first place. We need to get rid of the pretentiousness of academia, which keeps all this stuff locked up only for the elite, or only for the people with credentials, all right? And that last point is huge, because if you've ever read a scientific paper and then read an article about that same paper, 2 very different things. Usually, not in every case, but in most cases, the articles are sensationalized because that's what sells, or it's just a complete straw man. It doesn't even talk about what the paper says. It just talks about whatever the reporter or the writer of the article concocted. And if people actually had access to the sources directly, or if that was presented to them directly, and you don't have to subscribe to some membership of a scientific journal or be part of a scientific community and prove your credentials, guess what? Maybe people actually would think critically about it. But just assuming that they're not going to be able to, and then never putting that to the test by keeping information locked up for any number of reasons, makes that claim unfalsifiable, because then it's not being tested. And that has got to stop. So there you go. Let's mitigate some of these ways that the free market idea suck currently, because the market is both the buyers and the sellers. When we examine the information, we're the buyers, and that's our part in the market. So really, when I first looked at the quote, I was thinking, well, is it really the problem with the market itself? But yeah, I mean, it is. And we can do more to fix it. So let's do that, huh? Thank you for listening to my ramblings, even though this was more disorganized than usual today. Love and gratitude. You're appreciated. Done.